Right now, a new trap set by the Ukrainian armed forces has been triggered, and the enemy is suffering catastrophic losses. The Russian command is in a panic over such a strike by Ukraine. They are afraid to tell Putin about this. Up next are the hottest footage and the whole truth about how the Ukrainian armed forces are turning the tide of events. Pokrovsk, Syrskyi has revealed his hand, showing what is really happening there. Kupiansk, the Russians are literally surrounded. A black day for Crimea. The cleansing of the peninsula has begun with powerful strikes, and depots and base headquarters are exploding one after another. Ukraine is preparing a grand blitzkrieg, the true beginning of liberation. A sensation. A new US military base right under Russia's nose. This is a direct knockout for the Kremlin. Washington has secretly entered the game. What secret plan have the Americans prepared? A revolution on the battlefield. Ukrainian drones, robots, and new systems have paralyzed the enemy with lightning speed. Which specific secret development by the Ukrainian armed forces is changing the rules right at this moment? Putin's secret security, men in black with direct access to the dictator. Could they really decide his fate? Something unexpected has come to light. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hotspot. The epicenters of the war? Pokrovsky, Kupiansk. It is here that the outcome of the entire battle with Russia is being decided. The front is ablaze and the enemy is suffering catastrophic losses. A secret operation in the armed forces, a new trap for the Russians. This is what they are afraid to tell Putin. The Russian command is in panic and has no idea what's going on. We will show you the hottest footage and reveal the whole truth about how our forces are turning the tide. Watch.
The battles for control over the cities of Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, two strategic hubs on Ukraine's eastern front, do not stop for a single day. The occupiers keep throwing in new forces, trying to break through the defenses. But Ukrainian troops are steadfastly holding back the assaults, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy.
The occupiers are using a scorched earth tactic both in the Kupiansk and Pokrovsk directions. This means massive strikes on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces, temporary deployment points of personnel, and first and foremost on the residential infrastructure of these cities, as well as the use of various means of destruction, including heavy flamethrower systems like the TOS-1 Ason Sepyok. This is thermobaric weaponry, which is prohibited by conventions. Its use is banned in urban environments. It has indiscriminate effects, including on the civilian population.
Pokrovsk is currently the epicenter of the fiercest fighting.
Up to 170,000 personnel have been concentrated by the occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction. This is a quarter of all the units of the occupying country's army currently present on the territory of Ukraine. Plus, the occupiers have an advantage in the use of tactical and army aviation. This specifically refers to strikes on the positions of Ukraine's defense forces using guided aerial bombs, KABs.
Russian units are tightening their grip around the city and trying to complete the encirclement. Kremlin propaganda is already reporting a cauldron, but these statements are just another round of information manipulation. The General Staff of Ukraine denies Moscow's claim of a complete encirclement. At the same time, they acknowledge that the situation there is extremely serious.
Over the past few days, Ukraine's defense forces have managed to significantly stabilize the situation directly in Pokrovsk itself. By order of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, special units of the Special Operations Forces, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and other components of Ukraine's defense forces were deployed to Pokrovsk. They are conducting search operations aimed at eliminating small enemy assault groups.
Moreover, fighters from the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala cleared the city council building in Pokrovsk and raised the Ukrainian flag there, a symbol of not only military but also political significance.
Special units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, in particular the Special Operations Forces of the main Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, are currently involved in unblocking the logistics for Ukrainian defenders, namely the delivery routes for ammunition, evacuation of the wounded, and rotation of personnel. This is the main task facing these special units.
Tactical successes are also being observed in adjacent areas along the Pokrovsk direction. On the Dobropilya salient, Ukrainian defenders have taken control of the settlement of Shakhova. This complicates the enemy's plans for a major breakthrough and increases the chances for local stabilization.
This is the so-called Dobropilya incursion. It is precisely Shakova that effectively cuts off Russian units from their rear supply bases. In addition, over the past week, Ukrainian defense forces have deoccupied a number of settlements in this direction. These are Kucherev, Yar, Shakova, and Sukachki. This has significantly improved the tactical situation.
On the other flank is Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Here, fighting is taking place for every street and every building. Flags on the buildings change several times a day.
The situation along the Kupiansk direction has been stabilized. Moreover, even Russian sources note the lack of progress both in the Kupiansk direction and accordingly in the so-called Kupiansk-Sli direction.
Ukrainian forces are conducting a series of counterattacks. In particular, in the northern part of the city, the defenders managed to push back the occupiers. But it's too early to speak of a final success. The situation remains dynamic and unstable, changing literally every hour.
The defense forces carry out their tasks every day without stopping. They are constantly eliminating both small groups and stopping columns of equipment. In the near future, the situation, both according to Deep State and other maps, will be constantly changing. Because in any case, we are not going to abandon the city or give it to the enemy.
Pokrovsk and Kupiansk are the 2 points where the further outcome of the war is being decided. Russia is throwing thousands of soldiers and tons of metal there, but it has not been able to break Ukrainian resilience. Every meter of this land is a fight for life, for the future. And while the enemy tries to win by sheer numbers, Ukrainian fighters are destroying those numbers. Shock. Putin is fleeing Crimea. The deoccupation plan has been launched. The Ukrainian armed forces are delivering powerful strikes against enemy military targets. Warehouses, headquarters, and bases are literally exploding one after another. Every operation is meticulously planned, every strike is precise. Experts are convinced that Ukraine is preparing something grand. The start of deoccupation is just around the corner. All the details are coming up next.
A unique operation that lasted for months ended with a spectacular explosion in the middle of Donetsk. Locals say that nothing like this has ever been seen before in the occupied territories. Where did they hit? What was destroyed? And most importantly, what did the Ukrainian armed forces use to strike?
Judging by the special effects and the massive explosions, it was the Flamingo missiles at work.
So let's go through everything step by step. Last night, a powerful explosion rocked Donetsk, after which, according to eyewitness videos, a fireball rose into the sky resembling a nuclear mushroom cloud, and windows were blown out in buildings several kilometers from the epicenter. Right now,
my windows have been blown out.
In fact, this is the area of the Oktyabrski airport. A large ammunition depot, missiles hit there. There is no official information yet, but people are already talking about an ammunition depot. I watched the video. It's spectacular. Most likely, it really was a very large missile or shell depot, because in the video, just like in science fiction movies or computer games, there's an explosion, then a second explosion, and you can clearly see this glowing, rapidly expanding shockwave. In other words, the strike on the depots in Donetsk was very successful.
a bit later, some clarity on this issue was provided by Robert Magyar-Brudi, the head of UAV systems for the Ukrainian armed forces. According to his information, the strike hit a large depot of Shahed-type drones where warheads were also stored.
The targeting of this complex objective turned into a months-long painstaking intelligence operation pieced together from small fragments. Last night, it was carried out using appropriate strike assets by the Special Operations Forces and the missile troops of the Ukrainian Defense Forces.
Analysts note that despite the Shahed's long range, it was extremely important for the Russians to keep the drone depot close to the front line. After all, when the occupiers launch UAVs just a few dozen kilometers from the line of contact, the Ukrainian armed forces simply don't have time to respond quickly. As a result, the drones carry out their terror in frontline cities and also strike at the forward positions of our troops.
Disrupting the logistics of supplying shells and missiles for the drones, for the Pokrovsky direction, for Pokrovsk itself, is very important for us right now.
But what exactly the defense forces did there, our command preferred not to disclose. One thing is certain, drones definitely took part in the attack, but something else followed them as well.
As the footage from there shows, it was clearly not just drones in action. Apparently they were distracting the local air defense, but the final decisive strike was delivered by something resembling a rocket. It might have been a drone or possibly a missile.
And
the fact that missiles were indeed used is also supported by Madya's reports about the participation of Ukraine's missile forces in the attack.
I don't think that the warehouse with Shahids was unprotected, that it was just some hangars, most likely not. They were talking about some kind of underground bunker. And that's another reason why I think it was Flamingos. Of course, they could have used Storm Shadow as well. And Storm Shadow would also be suitable here since it has a bunker busting capability. Nevertheless, the scale of the detonation shows, or at least it seems to me, that if you look at the first second, the explosion was clearly bigger than just a couple 100 kilograms of a Storm Shadow warhead.
So yes, most likely it really was our Ukrainian Flamingos. By the way, this is already the third time just this week that they've inflicted colossal damage on the Russians. But in Crimea, such power wasn't needed. That's why drones were sent to attack the peninsula. In occupied Simferopol, around 2:30 in the morning, a fire broke out at an oil depot. Presumably, we're talking about Krymneftezbyt in the area of the village of Bitumnoye. There were also reports of 4 strikes in Gvardeyskoye. After that, smoke rose into the sky. There, the hits likely struck the local power plant, which temporarily ceased operations. Sensational. The US has stabbed Putin in the back. Shocking. While the Russian dictator was begging Syria for bases, Washington is secretly entering the game. The new US military base is a direct blow to the Kremlin. What secret deal are the Americans preparing? Right now, all the details of the global reshuffle.
Trump is increasing pressure on Putin, but
this is happening. There's nothing that can be done about it here.
the US is increasingly pushing Russia out of the Middle East, causing the Kremlin dictator to lose his foothold in Syria.
There's no need to be afraid. Anyone who starts to get scared will lose everything right away. But it's absolutely necessary to understand what might be happening.
America is preparing to deploy a military contingent at an airbase in Damascus. Syrian sources note that it's not just about a military presence, but also about creating a center for intelligence, refueling, logistics, and humanitarian missions. At the same time, Syria will officially retain sovereignty over the facility.
For Trump, it's simply important to demonstrate the success of his policy in the context of establishing stability in the Muslim world. And overall, I think this is part of a corresponding policy that is generally connected to the Middle East. In other words, overall, Trump is primarily focused on establishing and maintaining stability in the Middle East that would not interfere with oil extraction.
The new base will be located near Syria's southern borders, close to areas that are planned to become a demilitarized zone as part of the upcoming pact between Damascus and Tel Aviv. The mediator is the administration of US President Donald Trump, who is personally overseeing the negotiations.
The United States firmly expects and anticipates that there will, in the foreseeable future, be a new governing regime established in Syria, which at the very least will be quite loyal and supportive to Israel. This significant development is expected to help stabilize the situation in the region and will likely reduce tensions overall. So the main goal here is to reduce tensions. The aim is to ensure that there are no new escalations, and in this way that the United States will not need to maintain a constant large-scale military presence in the Middle East. According to
Reuters, American C-130 transport planes have already conducted test landings at the base. Local staff confirmed that American specialists have been arriving there in recent weeks. Already on Monday, November 10th, Trump will hold a meeting with the new Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara at the White House. This will be the first visit of the head of the Syrian state to the United States.
For al-Shara, this is another step toward recognition of his legitimacy, even though he is not technically an elected president, but nevertheless, no one is really paying much attention to that. That is, well, yes, he is being recognized by the President of the United States. For him, obviously, this is a significant personal victory that will allow him to strengthen his power. On the other hand, for Trump, this is kind of a demonstration that his Middle East policy is successful. So I think this is more of a mutually beneficial situation.
Let us recall that on October 15th, the president of Syria, Ahmed al-Shara, arrived in Moscow to meet with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The negotiations took place in the Kremlin. We
maintain diplomatic relations.
Well, can you really call them relations? Just a few years ago, Russia was threatening to kill al-Shara. Putin changes his rhetoric quickly. Moreover, the Kremlin supported Assad's regime and fought against those who wanted to overthrow the dictator. Assad fled to Russia and is still hiding there. Russia, which had maintained its influence in Syria for decades, now found itself outside the key processes. After the fall of Assad's regime, the Kremlin lost its military bases and political weight in the region, and the United States took the vacant spot.
It's clear that the new Syrian authorities are bargaining. Who will make the better offer? And so far, it seems that the offer from the United States looks more attractive to the new Syrian authorities. If things continue in this direction, it is quite possible that, even though there may not be any formal break with Moscow, Russia will clearly lose its position. Still, I think that in any case, it's impossible to say that Moscow's current position in Syria is comparable to what it was during the Assad era.
Russia is losing its influence on the world stage, which is evidence of the failure of Vladimir Putin's foreign policy. And this is only the beginning.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
A miracle of Ukrainian defense, a revolution on the battlefield. The smartest and deadliest accurate drone is already here. Engineers have created a sensation. Drone robots and new strike systems are entering the fight at cosmic speed. The enemy is stunned, communications are paralyzed, and equipment is disabled. Which secret development is changing the rules of war right now? Watch now!
Reconnaissance, fire adjustment, and striking targets by dropping munitions. The Chinese Mavic drone is practically the main weapon of the Ukrainian armed forces in the war against the occupier. And now Ukrainian industry has begun supplying domestically produced Mavic-type UAVs to the front lines.
The certain Mr. X invested created the Ukrainian Mavic, and we will see it soon. We've already delivered the first 1,000 to the battlefield.
Compared to the Chinese Mavic, the Ukrainian counterpart has a greater flight range and can carry a heavier payload. It is used not only for reconnaissance, but also for strike missions. The importance of the emergence of Ukrainian drones in this niche is hard to overestimate, since there are huge problems with the supply of Mavics to Ukraine.
DJI has banned sales to Ukraine, piously declaring that its products are not intended for military purposes, so drones have to be purchased from third parties. The security issues are obvious. The Pentagon has banned any use of DJI drones which send data back to the manufacturer. DJI has also added security features that make it impossible for the latest models to fly in geo-blocked zones, including Ukraine, without extensive hacking. Finally, sovereign drone production appears to be a key strategic capability for the future.
The Chinese Mavic drone's counterpart is called the Shmavic, and despite its ironic name, it has already been certified and boasts some serious features.
The Shmavic is positioned as a tactical reconnaissance drone designed to carry out operational tasks on the front lines. Unlike the civilian Mavic, which is mainly used for aerial photography and videography, the Shmavic is built for combat conditions. It has a range of up to 15 kilometers, a flight time of up to 60 minutes, and is equipped with a reliable navigation system resistant to interference.
As early as last year, the government announced its interest in replacing Chinese drones. Now, manufacturers have already completed certification of Ukrainian Mavics and production has been established.
As of today, it is impossible to fully replace the entire fleet of drones currently being used in Ukraine in the short term. Our weapons manufacturers already have developments and designs that meet the needs of our security and defense forces. Now it is necessary to scale up this production, minimize the number of foreign counterparts as much as possible, and switch to domestic models.
There are already many Ukrainian analogs of the Mavic, including Ukreporter, Yaitia, and the charming Shmavik. They are larger than DJI Mavic drones and are equipped with long-range communication. They are resistant to interference and cost more. But they may turn out to be more economical thanks to their greater reliability.
For us, the key indicator is not the price per drone, but the cost of a single mission. While a typical Mavic performs about 60 missions per drone, our systems on average complete around 300 missions per unit. With a comparable purchase price, the cost of a single mission is 5 times lower. This means that military units operating our drones receive a much greater overall economic benefit. Drone manufacturer.
Independent UAV production is a crucial element of modern warfare, and Ukraine knows this better than anyone, because both short-range UAVs and long-range strike drones have become key elements of national defense.
The front has exploded. The AFU have driven the enemy into a deadly trap. Pokrovsk, Kupiansk, there's no way out. The Ukrainian flag is already in the city center. Shock in the Kremlin. Putin's plans are turning to dust. Soldiers are fleeing in panic. Fiery traps are snapping shut one after another, and propaganda can't keep up with inventing new myths. Watch for all the details.
The Ukrainian flag is once again in the center of Pokrovsk. The AFU have cut off the Russian salient to the north of the city, and fighting is already taking place on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir. The latest news, what's happening on the front today? Watch right now. Today, Pokrovsk is the main hotspot of the Russian-Ukrainian war. The main objective of the enemy is to secure their hold on the city as much as possible, according to the AFU. To achieve this, the enemy is increasingly using civilian clothing. In particular, this is how they managed to raise the Russian tricolor over the Pokrovsk City Council. A few hours later, the defense forces restored the Ukrainian flag to its place, destroying an observation post inside the building and clearing out the enemy in the process. At the same time, fighting continues in other districts of the city.
Ukrainian defense special units have eliminated more than 100 Russian occupiers. This number only includes irrecoverable losses, not so-called sanitary losses. At present, the main efforts of the special units, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, and the Special Operations Forces are focused on unblocking logistics. The Ukrainian defense forces are expanding their area of presence to prevent the possible operational encirclement of our units.
At the same time, in their attacks on Pokrovsk, the Russians tried to use the weather as a factor, according to fighters on the ground. And the first attempts to drive through the city using vehicles have already been recorded.
Meanwhile, a National Guard drone operator from the Hostry Kartusi unit is observing a troubling trend. The Russians are at least trying to enter Pokrovsk using vehicles. Unfortunately, the bad weather is currently playing into the hands of the occupiers, writes Hostry Kartusi. Previously, we saw Russian troops infiltrating Pokrovsk exclusively on foot, and at most there were occasional attempts to break through on motorcycles. But today, due to the fog, we have already spotted the first Russian military pickup truck in the city. They leisurely scattered the barricades and drove through the streets of Pokrovsk.
However, they were later destroyed, analysts add. At the same time, the main clashes are already taking place on the far outskirts of Pokrovsk. Within the city itself, both Ukrainian and Russian positions remain. Both sides are making a particular effort not to draw attention to themselves, so as not to attract a barrage of drones.
The main fighting between Ukrainian and Russian units is taking place specifically on the northern outskirts. The Ukrainian forces that remain deeper within the city are not drawing attention for now. They are likely waiting for reinforcements to strengthen their counterattacks. As a result, the Russian infiltration has gradually deprived Ukraine of control over most of Pokrovsk, creating a gray zone. But Russian soldiers are also unable to take control of it. Their forces are insufficient and the threat from drones is too great.
However, this situational success of the occupiers is primarily due to colossal losses. As our drone operators report, during our assault on average, they send groups of 3 people with the clear expectation that 2 will almost certainly be killed, and if anyone survives, it will only be 1.
In some areas near Pokrovsk and in Pokrovsk itself, Russian losses reach a ratio of 1 to 18 in favor of the Ukrainians. That is, for every wounded or killed Ukrainian soldier, there are up to 18 killed and wounded Russian servicemen.
Russian units are also aware of these statistics. That's why every time the occupiers receive reinforcements, it looks roughly like this. People against their will. Meanwhile, analysts are noting the successes of the defense forces north of Pokrovsk. There, Russian forces continue their attempts to get behind our group's lines. However, time and again, they suffer defeat.
These are tactical successes of the Ukrainian defense forces in the area of Shakov and Rodinsky. These two settlements are currently key to ensuring the logistics of the Ukrainian defense forces. And our defenders have managed to significantly improve their positions in these directions. In addition, there has been significant progress in the Shakov area. This makes it possible to effectively cut off the so-called incursion of Russian troops into the Ukrainian defense forces.
Putin's troops are also failing to achieve their objectives in Kupiansk. The city, which according to Gerasimov has supposedly been encircled for 2 weeks, is putting up such resistance that the Russians haven't advanced a single meter there during this time.
Naturally, there is no question of Kupiansk being encircled, just as with Pokrovsk, because the Russians' plan was to encircle it from the north. They wanted to break through from the south, cut off a large group of Ukrainian troops, and eliminate, or rather create a breach in our defenses. That was their goal, but they failed to achieve it, so the assaults continue. Now they're trying to infiltrate the city from the north in this way, but Ukraine's defense forces are acting actively, both in Kupiansk itself and to its north.
Meanwhile, an unexpected direction of fighting is unfolding in the Zaporizhia sector, right on the bed of the Kakhovka reservoir.
Yes, it has already dried up enough for soldiers to pass through there. As a result, Ukrainian special forces made it as far as the Bolshaya Kuchuguri Islands, where a Russian position was already located. The Ukrainians achieved victory, took control of the islands, and now part of the mainland, and raised their flag. By the way, this is what Bolshaya Kuchuguri used to look like. For a long time after the dam was breached, the bed of the Kakhovka reservoir remained boggy and soft, but it gradually dried out and became overgrown with grass and shrubs. As we can see, infantry can already move around there. Light vehicles most likely can as well.
And finally, new details have emerged regarding the recent Ukrainian strike on Donetsk. As is known, a warehouse storing Shahed-type drones was hit there the day before. Now it has become known how many of them were there.
The estimated number of Shahed-type UAVs, including Geran, that were stored in the warehouses at Donetsk airport is about 1,150 to 1,200. Whether all of them were destroyed is unknown. These are analysts' estimates. This is roughly a month's supply of Shaheds for use at the front line, meaning for striking tactical targets on the front, for which the Shaheds are essentially converted into giant FPV drones.
Let me remind you, most experts agree that the strike was carried out by Ukrainian Flamingo missiles, which in fact successfully penetrated Russian air defenses 3 times in 4 days.
A secret behind the Kremlin's curtains. Who are these people in black suits? Putin's secret bodyguards. They can anticipate an attack and neutralize a threat, but shocking rumors are emerging. Could it be that these very people who have direct access to the dictator might one day decide his fate? Watch.
They are always nearby, at summits, funerals, hockey games, and even in the sauna. Putin's bodyguards are not just security, they are an entire parallel universe where the main purpose in life has become preserving the body of the aging dictator. They stand like statues, scanning the crowd, seemingly without blinking. If someone gets too close, they instantly form a human shield.
On foreign social media, a video is going viral where Putin's bodyguard looks like a Terminator. His gaze seems to have scanned the entire crowd in a second.
There are a huge number of videos about Putin's security online. But who are all these people and why are they trusted more than any minister? In the 90s, St. Petersburg's Vice Mayor Putin didn't have state security, so a private bodyguard, Roman Seprov, a former celebrity bodyguard, was by his side.
Here, within the walls of the Kremlin, the history of our country has been made for centuries.
Here he is, Roman Seprov, in the center of the frame, standing right next to Ksenia Sobchak and Alexander Rosenbaum during Putin's inauguration.
Seprov became not just a bodyguard, but a mediator between the future president and the criminal world. Through him passed both casino contracts and flows of black cash. So let's just say the beginnings of Putin's security service were rather creative.
The head of the security agency repeatedly carried out all sorts of delicate assignments. For example, it is believed that it was Seprov who acted as the intermediary between Putin and the St. Petersburg crime bosses.
When Putin became president, the myth of an eternal threat became part of the cult. Officially, there were allegedly 5 assassination attempts on him. Snipers, Arabs, Chechen militants, a set of enemies to fit the mood. And the more threats there are, the more security he gets.
5 assassination attempts, or so I was told. Not as many as Castro had. There were 50 attempts on his life. According to official data, there were 5 on you. Yes.
Since then, Putin's security has become not just a service, but almost a whole religion. To get into the inner circle, you need to be not just healthy and loyal. You need a perfect passport, no beard, no tattoos, and no doubts.
All of Putin's bodyguards have service experience. This could be the FSO or FSB Academy, and before that, military schools. Candidates go through several interviews, talk to a psychologist, and of course, take a polygraph. How else can you find out if the person guarding Vladimir Vladimirovich is a patriot or not?
The average age of Putin's bodyguard is 36, with a salary of 80 to 100,000 rubles. Yes, they protect a national treasure, but they earn less than a sales manager in Moscow. Still, they get honor, stability, and trips to Gelendzhik on assignment. Alexei Dyumin, the main star of the Kremlin security, is said to have saved Putin from drowning and even from a bear. Over the years of his service, Dyumin rose from bodyguard to governor of Tula and later became a presidential aide. Essentially, Putin's security detail is a career elevator, only it goes up through loyalty.
It was a very remote site in the mountains, and at night I was on duty in the house. The president was already resting, and then over the radio they told me, "A bear is approaching your entrance." Naturally I was armed, and the president was upstairs. So the bear and I looked each other in the eyes, he backed off a little, I opened the door and emptied the entire magazine of my pistol at his feet.
Even Putin's cooks are FSO officers. They don't just grill meat, they also practice shooting at the range. Every ingredient is checked as if it were a nuclear launch button. Before Putin himself tastes a dish, his bodyguards try it first.
All my cooks are employees of the Federal Protective Service. They're military personnel holding various ranks. I don't have any other cooks.
Today, Putin travels in an armored train equipped with a hammam, a gym, and secure communications. And everywhere he goes, a special suitcase follows him. Inside, there's neither paper nor a laptop. It contains the president's biomaterials. Putin's security feeds him, protects him, and idolizes him. Because in a system where the safety of one person is more important than the safety of the entire country, that's how it works.
That's all for now. For more breaking news from the front, tune in to the next episode.